Snow hammered the pine wood motel that night, thick, heavy, hiding everything it touched. From inside my truck, I saw her. Helen, my wife of 43 years. She stumbled out of room 12, coat half zipped, eyes wide like she'd seen a ghost. She pressed her key fob once. Nothing. Twice. Still nothing. Then she froze. Her car was gone. Only 2 long tire tracks cutting through the snow, vanishing into the dark woods. I didn't move, didn't shout. I just watched, because sometimes silence says more than rage ever could. 2 hours later, she came home to find her car parked neatly in the driveway, keys on the table, and my wedding ring beside them. That's when she realized the truth. I'd been there. I'd seen everything. This isn't about a missing car. It's about the moment a man loses his trust and decides to take his life back. Hit subscribe if you've ever been lied to. You'll want to see how this ends. The snow kept chewing up the highway as her taxi pulled away, those red taillights shrinking like a warning I'd ignored for years. I started my old silver Chevy and gripped the wheel harder than I needed to. At 65, you learn there are 2 kinds of fights. The loud kind you win for a minute, and the quiet kind you win for good. I took the back road toward Maple Creek, past the grain silos and the diner where the waitress knows my coffee order. The heater rattled, the wipers kept a tired beat, and my breath fogged the glass. Every mile stretched the same question across my chest. Do I stop this tonight, or do I learn everything first? Men my age don't get second chances at dignity. We get one clean shot. At the county line, I made the decision. No scene, no shouting, not yet. I'd keep my mouth shut and keep my eyes open. By the time she reached the house, the kitchen light threw that warm yellow we used to call home. I'd been there first. Her sedan sat straight in the driveway like it had never left. Inside, on the table I built 30 years ago, I laid her keys. Dry, clean, honest. Beside them, my wedding ring, a circle that had done its job until it didn't. She stepped in, stopped, and I watched the confusion change shapes on her face. Shock, then hope, then fear. There's a special kind of quiet when a lie lands without a place to hide. You can hear the clock and your own heartbeat arguing. She touched the keys like they might burn. I didn't say a word, because this wasn't about a car anymore. It was about coming home to find something worse. The truth, set out plain on a table, with nowhere left to run and nowhere left to pretend. I cleared my throat, and the words were simple as a nail. I know. She flinched like the floor moved, then tried my name twice, the first one wrong. Frank Jack, can we talk? Funny what slips when the mask does. I pulled out a chair, but not for a conversation, for distance. My boots carried me to the wood shop out back, same way they've carried me through every storm since '82. The door hinges sighed, sawdust lifted in the heater's breath, and Merle Haggard hummed the same old song about holding on. Men think anger is power, but silence is heavier. It settles in a room and never misses. I ran my hand along a chair arm I'd been sanding, felt for rough spots, the way a man checks his own heart for splinters. She stood in the kitchen doorway, small and sorry. I let the quiet do the talking. Tonight, silence would carry the weight. It's a strange thing how memory sneaks in when the present hurts. I saw our first apartment, thin walls, a mattress on the floor, 2 people who believed cheap coffee and a steady paycheck could solve anything. I saw the day we signed the mortgage on this place, me promising I'd finish the upstairs by Christmas and somehow making it true. Saturday pancakes, Sunday church, broken fan belts, Little League, prom photos tacked crooked on the fridge. The radio kept rolling through the years like it never learned a new song. Back then, quiet meant peace. Lately, quiet meant distance. Somewhere between paying the bills and fixing the gutters, I stopped being a husband and turned into furniture. Useful, steady, invisible. Men don't say it out loud, but we all want the same thing, to be seen by the person we built our life with. Standing in that shop, I finally admitted it. I'd vanished. She came to the doorway with tears ready, a story preloaded. Bad roads, dead battery. I just needed a place to wait it out. I looked at her boots. No salt line, no clumped snow, just a clean heel and a lie that hadn't thought about details. The old me would have exploded, broken something I couldn't fix. the man I needed to be kept his hands steady. I checked the clock, remembered the motel's neon reflecting in fresh drifts, traced the time it takes to get from there to here. I thought about the bank drawer where statements go missing when love goes wandering. My father used to say, "Measure twice, cut once." Tonight, I measured. Her voice grabbed for sympathy, for the version of me that patches everything without asking questions. I let it pass. I wasn't going to be baited into noise. I would build proof, slow, square, and strong as oak. By morning, my plan was simple. Measure twice, cut once, don't swing wild. Helen was already at the stove, flipping pancakes like old times. The first batch came out burned, black around the edges, syrup trying to save them. She didn't look at me when she said she was sorry, said she'd made a mistake, said the roads were bad, said we could fix it. I'll cut it off. I'll call a counselor. We can talk to someone. I've rebuilt porches and staircases that took less time than this marriage, and even those still creak in the rain. I looked at the plate, tasted the ash, and nodded once. Not because I believed her, because I wanted to believe there was something left to save. My dignity, if nothing else. Men our age don't need fireworks. We need solid ground. One chance, I said. Her shoulders dropped with relief. Mine didn't. Forgiveness, temporary, provisional, hung in the air like a truce signed in pencil. That truce didn't last a day. By noon, her phone started buzzing like a trapped bee. She'd glance at the screen and slip into the hallway, voice down to a whisper, calling it work stuff. I sipped my coffee, watched the second-hand crawl, and started noting the times in my head. 12:17, 12:31, 12:46. There's a certain discipline you learn in a garage and a wood shop. Slow hands, steady breath, patient eyes. I put that to work. Instead of barking questions, I watched patterns. Instead of accusations, I kept track. Most men have learned this the hard way. If you push a lie too soon, it ducks and hides. If you light it right, it shows itself. After dinner, the phone lit up again. She stepped outside for air. I cleared the table, wiped crumbs into my palm, and felt a calm I hadn't felt in days. I wasn't hunting a confession. I was building a case, one quiet minute at a time. The next afternoon, she said she was running to the store, waved a list, promised she'd be right back. 2 hours turned into 3. I walked to the roll-top desk in the living room where we keep important papers, the mortgage, tax receipts, bank statements. Summer was missing like it never happened. August, July, June, gone. I tried the laptop we share. Her email was still signed in, like a door left cracked in a storm. I told myself I was only looking for counselors, something to make this mess bearable. But at the top of the inbox sat a subject line that hit like a hammer to the temple. 2 more weeks, baby. My hand didn't feel like my own when I moved the cursor. The room pressed in, the fridge hummed too loud. Outside, a truck rolled down Maple Street, slow and ordinary, like the world hadn't split. I clicked the message open and braced for whatever came next. It came fast. He bought it. The counseling buys us time. Another. He never checks the statements. Small pulls. He signs whatever I put in front of him. The dates stacked back 18 months. $50 here, $800 there, $1,000 when I was pulling overtime in January. Transfers labeled household, withdrawals tagged errands, always on Thursdays. Our place near the lake. Can't wait to wake up with you. We'll be free soon. My hands shook, not from hate, but from a kind of cold that crawls into the bones. This wasn't just a bad night at a motel. This was a plan. I scrolled and kept scrolling, past jokes they thought were clever, past promises that were never meant for me. The money wasn't a mistake. The lies weren't panic. They were a blueprint, drawn in my blood and signed with her smile. People talk about heartbreak. They don't talk enough about theft. Then I saw the word that cut deeper than the numbers. Furniture. Living with him is like living with furniture. A few lines later, his homemade stuff, junk. That's when the room tilted and all the years landed at once. Every chair I'd sanded smooth, every table I'd leveled until the wobble was gone, every night I came home smelling like cedar and motor oil because feeding a family mattered. Men can take a lot. We swallow pride, shrug off aches, carry weight without complaining. But being called invisible by the person who used to see you, that's a different kind of break. I closed the laptop like you lower a lid on a box you're not ready to open again. The kitchen went dark around the edges. The clock ticked, the heater clicked, and I sat very still. Not rage, not yet. Just the sound of a life I built being measured for someone else's escape. I sat there in the dark a long time before I heard her car. She came in late, snow in her hair, grocery bag with nothing but excuses. Store was packed. I looked at the clock. 3 hours? She blinked, then swung hard. You went through my private stuff. That's illegal. I slid the laptop across the table. Joint computer, joint account. Sit. She hovered, then sat. I opened the inbox. Click. Subject lines like road flares. 2 more weeks, baby. Click. He bought it. Click. Counseling buys time. My voice stayed even, short, clean, like cutting rot out of a board. Read. She tried to explain. I pointed to dates, to amounts, to Thursday after Thursday after Thursday. Every line was a nail. Every email, a hammer. She reached for the lid. I held it open. No more hiding. The kitchen got small. The truth took the air. Finally, the words I'd been waiting for, but not the kind that help. Silence. And her face saying what her mouth wouldn't. She couldn't deny it. How much? I asked. She stared like the number might spare her. I pulled the file drawer, took what statements she hadn't already stolen, laid them rim to rim across the table I built when Claire was 5. Highlighter out. Yellow marks blooming like bruises. 800, 1200, 50 here, 60 there, the kind that slides under a man's radar when he's working late to keep the lights on. I added in pencil. When the lead snapped, I grabbed a calculator. My thumb hit the keys like a heartbeat trying to calm down. Weeks became months. Months became a year and a half. The total climbed. 18,200, 20,400, 34,900. I kept going. 41,300, 44,600. The last column landed and wouldn't move. $47,000. The number sat there, plain, ugly, permanent. I set the calculator down like a verdict. That's a truck I didn't buy. That's a winter I paid for. That's our old age, sliced thin and carried out the back. I didn't raise my voice. The number was loud enough. When numbers don't bend, people try feelings. She reached for my arm. Jack, I'm getting older. I felt invisible. I was scared. I just wanted to feel alive. I nodded once. The words weren't new. They were just finally honest. Those are reasons, I said. What you did was a choice. Her mouth opened, then shut. I pushed my chair back, felt the legs scrape the floor. I refinished the summer Claire left for college. It made the same hard sound it made then. I wasn't going to sleep in that room tonight, or any night until this had a name big enough to carry it. I'm done pretending, I told her. You can have the bed. The hallway felt longer than it ever has. In the spare room, I pulled a clean sheet, laid it flat, and thought of all the lines I should have drawn years ago. Men say boundaries like they're fences. Tonight, mine was a door, and it closed. The porch boards were cold through my socks. I didn't turn on the light. I found a cigarette in the back of a drawer, the one my buddy Tom left here last summer, for emergencies. 20 years since I quit. The first drag burned like it had a grudge. The night didn't care. Across the fence, Tom's screen door squeaked. He didn't knock. He just sat, handed me a second smoke, and stared at the dark yard like it might answer. We didn't talk for a while. That's the kind of friend he is. Finally, what now, Jack? I watched the ember crawl. I stopped letting this happen to me. He nodded, like that was the only right answer. The wind moved the chimes on Doris's porch. Somewhere a dog barked, gave up. You want a name? Tom said. Of someone who knows how to hit back without making it worse? I didn't look at him, but I said yes. Tom reached into his pocket and slid a card across the rail. Janet Cruz, he said. Fairfield. She's tough. Fair. I turned the cardstock in my fingers the way I test a joint for wobble. The shake in my hands was gone. Out past the maples, the sky was turning the color of old nickel, dawn thinking about it. Behind me, the house I built stood quiet, still mine. "You sure?" Tom asked. I nodded. I was done waiting for the truth to please anybody. This needed a plan, not a scene. "Call at 7, he said. "She'll answer." We sat until the cold made our knees complain. When I finally stood, I felt something settle where the panic used to sit. Resolve, I guess, or maybe just the simple relief of picking a road. I put the card in my wallet behind my driver's license. Identity, direction. Inside, the phone glowed on the counter. I set an alarm. Then I made coffee strong enough to carry me through the call. The alarm hit 7, and I dialed before the second ring. "Jack Miller?" a woman said, steady as a level. "Janet Cruz. Come in today. Quietly. Don't tip your wife." Orders. Simple and clean. I set the phone down and went to work like it was a rebuild in the shop. File drawer, folders out, mortgage, taxes, bank. I photographed every page on the kitchen table, top left corner, center, bottom right, so I could prove order later. I labeled manila envelopes in block letters: checking, savings, Visa, receipts. I stapled yellow sticky notes with dates, circled the withdrawals we both knew weren't groceries. I opened the laptop, printed the worst emails, watched the tray spit out paper like a confession machine. Then I slid everything into a battered briefcase I haven't used since Claire's college loan meeting. Coffee went cold, hands stayed steady. This wasn't rage, this was work. At the door I paused, scanned the table one more time, and felt the click inside. The case had officially begun. Janet's office smelled like lemon polish and old decisions. Wood paneling, diplomas, a bowl of peppermints you trust for no good reason. She shook my hand like she meant it and started writing before I sat. "Adultery complicates emotions. Money makes it a case," she said. "We've got dissipation, assets moved without consent. We've got fraud, funds used for an affair. Here's the plan." Her pen tapped in rhythm. "Today, open a separate account in your name, move half of what's left, legal in this state. Photograph everything with serial numbers or receipts. Tonight, inventory the house. Tomorrow, I file for separation and a temporary restraining order on assets. You do not warn her. He," she glanced at the name Rick Howell, "doesn't learn before the sheriff does." I asked about chances. She didn't sell hope. She priced reality. "We won't get all of it back, but we'll get enough, and we'll protect what remains." Her voice didn't rise. "That's how you know it's a real plan." She slid the retainer across. $5,000. I flinched. She saw it. "I'll eat too," she said. "Not everything's about money. Some things are about dignity." I signed, the pen leaving a groove like a promise I could feel. "Rules," she said, counting on her fingers. "Do not alert Helen. Do not confront Rick. Do document everything. Photos, lists, timestamps. You speak to me, I speak to the court." I'm a man who keeps receipts for screws and sandpaper. Turning my own house into an evidence locker felt strange and right at the same time. We drafted a list. Tools in the shop, Linda, Helen's, jewelry, the antique clock from my mother, the gun safe, the titles. "One more thing," Janet said softer. "Don't confuse mercy with access. Boundaries are not cruelty." I tucked the folder under my arm and stood taller than when I walked in. Outside, the cold hit like a clean slap. I had skin in the game now, and a line I wouldn't cross. That night, Tom showed up with his Nikon and a thermos. We worked room by room like two old cops. Click, item, click, serial, click, timestamp. Kitchen, living, hall closet. Shop inventory took the longest. I named every tool out loud so the camera caught it. DeWalt planer, Craftsman lathe, cedar stock. The flash bounced off the glass in the curio like heat lightning. Halfway through, headlights swung across the porch. Helen's door opened, then her mouth. "What are you doing?" I didn't blink. "Spring cleaning." Tom didn't look up. He just kept clicking. The camera made a sound like a clock running out of patience. She crossed her arms, watched from the doorway, measured the distance she was losing. You can smell a storm before the first crack. She smelled it. She tried a laugh that didn't land and vanished down the hall. Tom lowered the camera. You sure? He whispered. I nodded. The air felt high and tight, ready to split. We kept shooting. At opening bell, I walked into a bank across town, sat with a woman who could be my daughter, and opened an account in my name only. I moved exactly half of what remained, no more, no less, signed the transfer, and felt a strange calm settle in my chest. When I stepped back into the cold, my phone buzzed. Janet. Background on Rick Howell is in, she said. Married, 2 kids, business bleeding out, complaints up to his ears. I leaned against the brick and let that sink in. So the man who called me furniture was selling my wife a fantasy while his own house burned. Don't contact his wife yet, Janet added, but keep it in your pocket. I pictured Claire at 8, clutching a softball, asking if I'd watch. I pictured Helen at 20, eyes bright, asking if we could make a life. The truth didn't make me feel bigger. It made me feel steady. Twist or not, I wasn't the mark anymore. That thought steadied me until it didn't, and I pulled onto the shoulder to breathe. Cold air through a cracked window, rubber ticking as it cooled, and that word kept bouncing around my skull. Furniture. Funny how a cheap insult can stick longer than a bruise. The man who said it was a predator, and the woman who repeated it used to be my wife. I let the anger pass like a truck in the night, loud, then gone. Control isn't about volume, it's about timing. I pictured a dovetail joint. You don't force it, you fit it. I decided not to tell anyone yet, not Helen, not Claire, not even Tom. The plan needed patience. I'd wait for the next mistake, the next Thursday, the next slip of the mask. When you've been working wood as long as I have, you learn the grain tells you which way to cut. I put the truck in gear and chose to hold the line. That evening, Tom and I took the paperwork to the porch like it was a chessboard. Coffee, manila folders, the kind of quiet that keeps a man steady. Headlights swept the yard. Helen's sedan rolled in, and right behind her came a lifted truck with more attitude than sense. Rick climbed out first, chin high, voice higher. We need to talk, he said, already in my grass. I stood, hands in pockets. Private property, I told him, each word flat. He took 2 more steps, threw a look at Tom like he could scare him back over the fence. Turn around, I said, or I call the sheriff. He laughed, that thin, showy kind of laugh men use when they feel small. Neighbors' lights clicked on up and down the street like witnesses taking their seats. Helen said my name, once soft, once sharp. I didn't move. Last warning, I told him, and meant it. The yard got quiet enough to taste. He finally stopped. Nothing deflates a bully faster than an audience. He felt the eyes on him, Doris on her stoop, Ed 2 houses down, blinds tilted at a nosy angle, and his voice dropped an octave. This isn't over, he muttered, stepping backward like it was his idea. Helen's face was a storm trying to pick a direction. I didn't give her one. It is, I said, calm as a winter field, and walked back to the porch. Tom didn't clap or grin. He just slid the folder back to me like a dealer returning the deck. The truck backed out too fast, gravel spitting, the kind of exit you make when you've already lost. Helen stayed by her car, small and furious, 1,000 words she couldn't spend. I sat down, lifted my coffee, and let the steam warm my face. First confrontation done. No yelling, no hands, just a line drawn in public and a man who didn't step over it. Morning brought a call I knew was coming. Dad, what are you doing? Claire's voice was tight, coached. Mom says you changed the locks, emptied accounts, won't talk to her. She says you're not yourself. I watched dust hang in a sunbeam over the sink and let her finish. It's a trap men fall into. Defend too hard, you sound guilty. Say too little, you sound cold. I'm okay, I told her. There are things I can't explain yet. I need you to trust me a little longer. She pushed back. Good kids do. She says you're paranoid. I swallowed. I love you, Claire. That was all I gave her. Not because she didn't deserve more, but because the truth, too early, turns to noise. Please, she said, softer now. Just don't do anything stupid. I won't, I said, and meant it twice. When the line went dead, the kitchen felt bigger and emptier all at once. I set the phone down and let the ache pass. Tom must have heard something in my steps, because he was already at the back door with 2 mugs. "Black," he said, no question mark. We sat at the table like men do when there's nothing left to posture about. "She got to Claire," I told him. He nodded, a man who's seen a fire jump roofs. "Truth's slow," he said, "but it shows." We drank in the same quiet that built this house, one paycheck at a time, one board at a time. I looked around at the walls I hung, the trim I cut, the nail holes I filled so well you'd never find them unless I told you where to look. Storms test a frame. This one was testing mine. I wanted to call Claire back, spill everything, clear my name with proof and blood. Instead, I watched the second hand on the stove clock crawl, and I chose the harder thing. Stand still, hold fast, let the house I built hold me up while the wind howled. Holding steady only works until the world starts whispering. I ran to the hardware store for sandpaper and deck screws and felt the looks before I heard the talk. 2 old boys by the paint shaker, voices low, glances quick. At the register, the kid who bags salt in winter couldn't meet my eyes. I drove over to the diner for coffee anyway. Doris slid a mug down like a mother hen and patted my knuckles. "Hang in there, honey." That traveled the room faster than the bell on the door. By the time I got back to the truck, my phone lit up. Support from folks who've watched me fix their brakes for years, poison from others who prefer a louder story. "Be a man and forgive. Monster. Proud of you. Coward. Small towns are kind until they're curious." I sat with it. Reputation is lumber you think you own until lightning tests the grain. I took a breath and let the storm pass through me without moving my feet. That night she asked to talk without Tom or witnesses, as if sunlight were the problem. We stood in the kitchen where our life used to be simple, and she aimed the first shot. "You're destroying everything, locking me out, turning people against me, making a scene." I kept my voice level, like reading a level bubble. "I didn't destroy anything. Consequences just came home." She tried for tears, then anger, then that flat weariness people use when they want a shortcut through blame. I pointed once, gently, at the stack of papers on the table. "These are choices. Weeks of them. Months. I didn't write a single one." She said I was cruel. I told her cruelty is pretending a wound isn't there and calling it love. The lights on the stove threw a quiet blue across her face. "You're not the victim here," I said, not loud, not triumphant, just true. I didn't follow her down the hall. I let the truth sit where it belonged. The house felt emptier after that, so the buzz in my pocket startled me. "Claire." A photo filled the screen, my old letters from before the wedding, thin paper, my clumsy cursive, ink that had bled at the edges. "Did you write these, Dad?" Then another, a close-up of a line I barely remember promising her mother I'd build a life that would hold. My chest ached the way it does when a song you forgot finds you on the radio. "I want to hear your side," she typed. "I'm listening." I leaned on the counter, thumb hovering, careful with the weight of the moment. I told her yes, those were mine, back when forever sounded possible and we chased it anyway. I didn't sell her a speech. I offered time. "Come by. I'll make coffee. We'll talk." The cold in the room warmed a degree. Even in midwinter, a man can feel a small spring crack the ice. Morning broke hard and clean, and Janet's name flashed before the kettle boiled. "Orders granted," she said. "Asset restraints. You can execute the lockout today." I stared at the window frost like it was a map, and there was only one road left. "Today," I said back, tasting the word. Some decisions feel like jumping. This one felt like finally stepping onto the ground that's been under your foot the whole time. She laid it out. Be civil, be thorough, don't be cruel, document everything. "This protects both of you," she said, and I believed her, not because it was kind, but because it was precise. I hung up and looked at the staircase I built when Claire was 12, the one that still doesn't squeak. "All right," I told the house as if it needed to hear it. "Let's finish what we started." Tom was already halfway across the yard with a toolbox when I opened the door. We worked like we were on a clock because we were. Tom handled the deadbolts, front, back, and the side door no one uses. I packed, not like a man throwing a tantrum, but like a man packing a guest room. Folded dresses, matched shoes, toiletries in a zipper bag. I set the suitcases on the porch, handles out, rain covers buckled, dignity intact. On the front door, I taped a thick manila envelope labeled with her name, copies of the emails, bank statements with the yellow slashes, the cabin lease, the order from the court. Evidence, not insults. Inside, I took pictures of every room, the way a claims adjuster would, not a husband. The camera clicks sounded like a metronome for ending. When we finished, Tom poured coffee into 2 chipped mugs and we sat in the rocking chairs I made the year my mother died. The wind ran through the maples. "You ready?" he asked. I wasn't sure, but I nodded. Some goodbyes you do standing up. Sunset painted Maple Creek the color of old pennies when her headlights swung into the drive. Tom and I didn't stand. We let the porch light do the talking. Helen saw the suitcases first, handles aligned, neat as a checklist, and then the manila envelope taped to the door with her name in block letters. She tore it open with hands that remembered our Christmases and forgot our vows. Pages slid out like cards from a stacked deck. Emails with sweetheart lies, bank statements bleeding yellow lines, the cabin lease with her signature next to his. Her face drained, the way a person looks when the world stops giving them places to hide. She tried to shuffle papers back into a story that fit. They wouldn't. The porch boards didn't creak. The street didn't breathe. It was just ink on paper and the truth finally sitting where we eat our meals. She glanced up at me as if I might rescue her from her own handwriting. I didn't move. "It's illegal," she snapped, grabbing for whatever was left. A rule, a loophole, a life raft. "You can't just read my messages, take my money, change my house." I kept my voice even, courtroom plain. Joint computer, joint accounts, and when joint funds pay for an affair, the name for it is marital fraud. The word hung there, colder than the January air. "You've got 24 hours to collect what's yours," I added, tapping the order on county letterhead. "After that, the sheriff enforces it." She blinked at the seal like it might blink back. "This is my house too," she tried. I nodded toward the deed copy and the list of serial numbers we'd photographed. "It's ours," I said, "which is why the court put it under a lock you can't wiggle." Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. I didn't fill the space. Law isn't loud, it's heavy, and tonight the weight wasn't on me. The lifted truck growled in before the quiet could settle, throwing gravel like a tantrum. Rick jumped out all swagger and cologne, chin forward the way boys do when they want to look like men. "What the hell is this?" he barked, stepping onto my grass like it owed him rent. I didn't stand. I reached into the inside pocket of my coat and handed him a second envelope. "For you." He ripped it open, skimmed, and the color left his face like a tide. Case number, fraud report, copies to the prosecutor. He tried a laugh that didn't have legs. "You're bluffing." I held up my phone where Janet's text glowed with the same number he was clutching. "File stamped," I said. He took a half step back, looked at Helen, looked at the papers, looked at me as if he might find a crack in one of us. There wasn't one. Swagger dies quick when it has to read. "It gets better," I told him, not unkind, just final. "Your wife knows." His jaw worked. "My... what?" "Sharon," I said. 2 kids. Sees your reviews, sees her missing money. Now she sees this. The porch lights on our street started clicking on like a row of eyes. Doris on her steps, Ed at his window, the Simmons boys pretending they weren't watching from the tailgate. Helen's breath hitched. The fantasy closed like a trap on her own ankle. Rick looked smaller in that big truck shadow. He tried to puff up, but the night wouldn't let him. "You had no right," he muttered. "I had every right to protect my home," I answered, the word home anchored with 43 years of nails and paint and winters. The papers fluttered in his grip. For once, the loudest thing in the yard was the truth, and it carried all by itself. He backed off first, of course. Bullies always do, muttering blame in every direction but the mirror. The truck spit stones and left a hole in the night that didn't take long to heal. Helen stayed, tears finally arriving like a rain too late to save the crop. "We can fix this," she said, reaching past the suitcases for the doorknob of a life that wasn't hers anymore. "Counseling, like we said, Jack, please." I stood up then, not to argue, just to end it. "You didn't make a mistake," I told her, quiet and clear. "You made choices, every Thursday, For 18 months. Her shoulders folded as if the weight had finally found them. I turned toward the house I built and the line I drew. No slam, no curse. Just a man walking away from what was breaking him. The porch light hummed. The maples whispered. Behind me, she said my name like it might still work. It didn't. When the door finally shut behind her, the quiet came back heavier than before. Tom rocked once in his chair and said what men like us say when there's nothing left to dress up. You did right. I nodded, but right didn't feel good. It felt like holding a line while something you loved tore away on the other side. We sat and let the wind move through the maples. No big speeches, no backslaps, just two old guys listening to a yard that had seen better nights. Porch light hummed, coffee went cold, the town settled like it always does after drama has eaten its fill. I thought of all the victories folks cheer that leave a man hollowed out, winning a fight, selling the truck you swore you'd die in, telling your daughter why her mother won't be home for dinner. Tom didn't push. He didn't have to. Sometimes the only way through is to feel the empty. The climax was small but real, admitting I wasn't happy, just done. The phone buzzed in my pocket long after the neighborhood went dark. Janet. Sharon filed charges. Rick's gone to ground. He's blaming Helen. I read it twice and waited for relief to show up. It didn't. Justice had its boots on, but my heart lagged behind. Rick going silent didn't fix my house or my hands or the way the word furniture still echoed like a nail gun in an empty room. I pictured Sharon's kitchen, the same late-night light, different headlines, same ache. It's easy to pretend revenge is medicine. It's not. It's a stunt that looks like healing from far away. I set the phone face down and stared at the knot in the porch rail I never sanded smooth, on purpose, to remember wood has scars. Law was moving. Good. But inside, the gears still ground. The small climax was choosing not to chase the feeling I thought I was owed. I took the loss like a man and went to bed sober. Morning found me where it always does, with the wood. I ran my palm over the cherry boards until the grain told me which way was right. The shop heater ticked alive. The radio found a low country station that minds its manners. I laid out the parts for the rocking chair. Rails, slats, arms, the kind of pieces that don't argue if you measure true. Glue line, clamp, wipe. There's a rhythm to building that asks nothing but attention and returns more than it takes. Every pass with the sandpaper quieted a corner of my head I hadn't reached in weeks. Men say work keeps us sane. I think it keeps us honest. The chair began to look like a chair again, and I started to feel like a man again. Useful, steady, present. The climax wasn't loud. It was the moment the spindles slid clean into their mortises, snug without a fight. Things that fit remind you you still can. Around noon, a number I didn't know lit the screen. Mr. Miller, it's Sharon Howell. I don't know how to thank you. You saved me and my kids a deeper hole. I leaned against the bench and let her talk, about accounts that didn't add up, about a smile that always had a bill attached, about the way shame keeps you quiet until it doesn't. I'm sorry for your hurt, I said, and meant it across both kitchens. She gave a small laugh that wasn't happy, just true. Hurt's not the bad part. Staying in it is. We didn't swap war stories or promise miracles. We traded dignity like neighbors pass sugar over a fence. Simple, enough, human. When we hung up, the shop felt less like a bunker and more like a place you build from. The day's climax was subtle but strong. Two people on opposite ends of the same mess choosing respect instead of rubble and feeling lighter for it. Tom rolled in after lunch with a toolbox and the same face he wears for funerals and fence repairs. Hinge in the pantry's squealing, he said. We fixed it like a prayer. Unscrew, oil, set, tighten, until the swing came back smooth. Maple Creek looked different out the window. Same street, softer light. The kind you notice when your shoulders finally drop an inch. Tom wiped his hands on a rag and asked, casual as weather, "You thinking about the church potluck next week?" I pictured the fellowship hall, lukewarm coffee, kids chasing each other between crock pots, Mary's lemon bars gone in 12 minutes. For weeks I'd been a headline. Maybe it was time to be a neighbor again. Maybe, I said, and the word surprised me with how right it felt. The climax wasn't a yes, it was the door inside me unlatching. Belonging doesn't come back with a parade. It arrives like a hinge that finally quits complaining and does its job. Maybe, I'd told Tom about the potluck, and that maybe was still warming in my chest when a Honda slid into the drive too fast. Claire. Eyes red, one small suitcase, the kind you grab when you don't know how long you're staying. We froze in the doorway for half a second, then stepped in and hugged like two people trying to remember a language. It was awkward and perfect. She smelled like drugstore shampoo and winter air. "I want to hear your side, Dad," she said, voice careful like she was setting down something fragile. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one I built when she was 5 and too short for her feet to touch the floor. I poured coffee we didn't drink. She kept looking at my face like she was measuring what hurt and what healed. The climax came simple and strong. She reached across, squeezed my hand, and said, "I'm here." Sometimes belonging is just 2 words that mean everything. She didn't want speeches. She wanted proof. Claire pulled out her phone and slid it over. Photos of bank statements from Mom's closet, the ones I couldn't find. Yellow highlights that weren't mine. Even a printed email or 2 I recognized from last week, folded sloppy and crammed under sweaters. "I checked," she said. "I needed to know." I felt something uncurl under my ribs I didn't know had tightened. She'd done the work I couldn't ask her to do. "I'm sorry I doubted you," she whispered, and the apology wasn't big or theatrical. It was honest the way a level bubble is honest. I didn't rush to take the win. I let it land. "Thank you for looking," I said, because that's what this really was, choosing to see. She wiped her eyes with the cuff of her sleeve and laughed at herself the way she did at 12. The climax was trust coming back not with fireworks, but with a click you can feel. We moved to the shop because talking is easier when your hands are busy. I set a cherry board on the bench and handed her sandpaper. "With the grain," I told her. "Always with the grain." Her first passes were choppy, the way new grief moves, too hard, then too soft. I put my hand over hers and showed her the rhythm. Even strokes, no hurry, let the wood tell you what it needs. Sawdust lifted in the heater's breath like snow that finally learned how to fall right. She snuck glances at me the way a daughter does when she wants to memorize someone and pretend she isn't. We didn't fix a marriage in there. We didn't try. We learned a board, and we learned each other. When she finally felt the surface go from rough to silk, she grinned, small and proud. The climax was quiet. "I get it," she said, "about the wood, about me, about patience that holds when words don't." By late afternoon, the porch was warm enough for jackets and stories. Tom showed up with a pie someone accidentally baked too many of, and we sat in the fading light while he talked about his wife, how she laughed at the wrong parts of movies and made a grocery list like it was a battle plan. Claire asked questions that mattered, the kind that don't pry but invite. I watched them trade memories like neighbors trading tools, useful, maybe a little worn, exactly what you need. The house didn't feel empty with the 3 of us in it. It felt right-sized. We weren't pretending this was the same family it used to be. We were building a new circle, small and solid, with enough room for truth and a second slice of pie. The climax wasn't a declaration. It was the moment Claire leaned back, exhaled, and let her shoulders drop. Safe isn't loud. It's a porch where the wind minds its manners and nobody has to be brave. Safety makes space for the hard stuff, and it came quick. Her phone buzzed, then buzzed again, then again. 17 times in a day adds up. Claire stared at the screen, jaw set, then flipped the phone face down. "Mom keeps calling. I need time." I swallowed every urge to steer, to coach, to win. Men my age like to fix. Sometimes loving is not touching the wrench. "I won't tell you what to do," I said, "but I'll be here while you do it." She nodded and let out a breath she'd been holding since she pulled in. The old pattern, panic, explain, apologize, repeat, hit a wall and didn't climb it. That was her choice, not mine, and it felt like watching a strong tree take root in good ground. The climax was clean. She walked her phone to the mudroom, set it on the shelf with the gloves, and came back to the table. We picked up the sandpaper. The grain was still the grain. We were still sanding side by side when Janet called. Her voice had that steady courtroom weight. "Figure 4 months for a decision," she said. "We can likely recover around $28,000. The rest, consider it tuition." I let that number settle where pride usually sits. Tuition. Not a scam I deserved, not a hole I fell into. Tuition for lessons I should have learned earlier. Listen closer. Set boundaries sooner. Read the grain before you cut. I repeated it out loud so Claire could hear I wasn't breaking. We'll get some back, I told her, and we'll protect what's left. She nodded, eyes searching my face for the crack that didn't come. I thought about the truck I never bought, the trips we skipped, the long winters paid one overtime shift at a time. Then I took a breath and chose the bigger picture. Keep the house, keep my tools, keep my name clean. The climax was quiet acceptance. Loss, yes, but on my terms. After the call, I went back to the chair and finished the armrest. The cherry had come up to a soft shine, not glossy, just honest. I ran my thumb along the curve the way you check your own heartbeat. Slow, certain. That old word tried to crawl back in. Furniture. And I stopped it where it stood. Furniture is something you forget until you need it. A carpenter decides what holds, what lasts, what gets cut away. I'm not the thing that sits in a room and waits to be noticed. I'm the man who builds the room. The shop smelled like warm wood and second chances. I said it out loud, to the boards, to the radio, to the part of me that needed to hear it. I'm not furniture, I'm the carpenter. The climax wasn't a shout. It was a line that clicked into place inside my chest, a name fitted back into its joint without force, snug and true. I had mail to send, so I drove to the post office, the one with the flag that squeaks. Mary was there, scarf bright enough to argue with February. "You look better," she said, in that small-town way that covers a lot of ground. We talked about her garden plans, rabbits that don't respect fences, and a granddaughter who hides peas under napkins. She pressed a tin of lemon bars into my hands, because I accidentally made too many, which is code for, you need sweetness you didn't ask for. I laughed, really laughed, and it surprised us both. On the way out, a couple folks nodded the kind of nod that isn't gossip, it's welcome. I sat in the truck and ate one bar with the window down, sugar and sunlight, and nowhere I had to be but here. The climax was ordinary as a mailbox, fear loosening its grip a notch, and the day tasting more like living than surviving. Tom asked if I'd drive him to the cemetery, his wife's day. We didn't talk on the way. The road knows the route. Grief does too. He said he'd be a bit, and I told him I'd wait. The heater clicked, a crow argued with the wind, and I watched a couple replace plastic flowers with real ones like a small rebellion against cheap. When Tom came back, eyes red and jaw set, I didn't ask a single thing. He sat, we looked forward, and the silence wasn't empty. It was respect. On the ride home, we listened to the ball game without caring who was up. He patted the dashboard once, the way you do when a truck gets you there and back. We never said, "I'm here for you," because men like us hear it better when it's shown. The climax was simple. Two friends sharing a quiet that held instead of hurt, a kind of ballast you don't know you need until you lean on it. A day later, Janet called again. "There's a letter from Helen," she said. "Apology, I can hold it or bring it by." I told her to keep it for now. Outside, the crocuses were pushing through last year's leaves, purple punching holes in brown. Spring doesn't ask permission, it shows up. I stood on the porch with a lemon bar and let the cold air make my eyes water for me. Maybe the letter said everything I wanted to hear 5 months ago. Maybe it said nothing that could help. Either way, reading it would reopen a room I'd finally managed to close. Not every hook deserves your mouth. I chose the world in front of me. A house still standing, a daughter in the shop, a friend who shows up with a toolbox in time. The climax was refusal, the good kind. I didn't need another version of yesterday. I needed the kind of silence that lets tomorrow grow. The next morning, a pickup I didn't recognize rolled past the house. Loud pipes, dark tint, the kind that used to make my chest jump. It didn't. It was just a truck on a Saturday, and I was just a man on a porch with black coffee and a little more sky in his lungs. I watched it fade down Maple Street and felt the old reflex reach for a panic that wasn't there to grab. Funny how fear trains you like a dog, and how you can untrain if you give yourself a different routine. Sip. Breathe. Feel your boots on the boards you nailed down. The wind carried the smell of someone's bacon from 3 houses over. and I let that be the headline instead of my past. A sparrow hopped along the rail like it owned the place. I raised my cup to it. The climax came small and clean. I didn't check the locks. I didn't stand. I stayed seated, and nothing bad happened. Before lunch, my phone buzzed with a number I knew by heart. "Jack, it's Cal Turner. My daughter's getting married. I want the big table, the one you promised me if she ever found a good man." I glanced at the shop like it had been waiting for this exact call. We talked dimensions, leaf extensions, stain versus natural, delivery dates that wouldn't step on the rehearsal dinner. I grabbed a pad and started sketching. 8 chairs, wide rails, breadboard ends. This wasn't busy work. This was a future you could set plates on. We ran the numbers and shook hands over the phone like two men who remember when that meant something. After we hung up, I pulled stock from the rack, weighed boards in my palms, and chalked cut lines. The saw would sing again. The clamps would earn their keep. The climax wasn't the sale. It was the promise to show up, to build something that outlasts the moment we're standing in. Claire came in from the mudroom with sawdust on her cheek and the grin of somebody who just made a thing that stands. "Come look," she said, tugging my sleeve. The bookshelf waited by the wall, walnut stain a hair uneven, one joint you could see if you knew where to look, and a frame that didn't wobble when I leaned a shoulder into it. "Shelf pins line up nice," I told her. "Back panel's true." She rolled her eyes at the compliment like her mother used to, but she didn't hide the pride. "It's not perfect," she said. "Neither am I," I answered, and we both laughed because it landed. I showed her how to knock the edge off with 2 passes of 220 grit, how to oil slow and wipe with the grain. She wrote "first one" inside the back rail where only we'll ever see it. The climax lived in her voice when she said, "I'll get better," and believed herself. Late afternoon, Janet checked in. "Update. Rick's arraigned next month. Business is toast. Sharon stabilized the accounts." I stood by the open door, Spring trying to be brave in the yard. For a second, I waited for the rush, the hot, stupid thrill you think justice owes you. It didn't come, and I was glad. "Tell Sharon I'm hoping her kids are okay," I said. No victory laps, no speeches about karma. That man burned his own house down. I just stopped him from lighting mine. Claire watched my face like she was taking notes for later. "You're not mad?" she asked. "Mad's easy," I said. "I'm tired and I'm moving forward." We went back to the bench and the little jobs that make a day honest. The climax was the choice not to pick up a grudge when the law finally picked up the slack. I left revenge on the floor where it belongs and kept my hands busy. Near dusk, the rocking chair told me it was ready. You can feel it when a piece stops fighting you and starts breathing on its own. I eased a thumb over the arm to catch any last snags. None. The runners tracked smooth, no chatter, no bite. I set it in the doorway where the light goes gold and gave it the test every chair earns. Sit, rock, listen. The creak was the good kind, the wood saying hello to itself. I pictured a baby tucked against a tired mother, a father nodding off with one boot still on, the kind of nightly mercy good furniture gives a house. My chest loosened a notch I didn't know was stuck. I wiped a final thin coat of oil, caught my reflection in the shine, older and not broken. The climax was quiet as a heartbeat, a first real finish after the storm, and a man who could finally say the piece and the person were sound. The next morning, I loaded the rocking chair into the bed of the truck with a moving blanket and the kind of care you give a sleeping child. The young couple lived in a rental on Birch Street, boxes still stacked like new promises. He opened the door with paint on his knuckles. She had that glow and worry new parents carry at the same time. We set the chair by the window where the light is gentlest at midnight. I showed him how to ease the rock, how to listen for the good creak, how a slow rhythm settles more than a song sometimes can. Their eyes found each other in that small way married folks do when they see a future they can touch. The bassinet wobbled once and then went still. I ran a cloth across the arm one last time and said what I wish someone had told me years ago. Sleep when you can, love even when you're tired. The climax was simple, passing strength forward. Driving back, Maple Creek laid itself out like a postcard. Church steeple cutting the sky, kids tossing a football too close to the street, someone grilling even though it was too early for spring bravado. By the time I hit my porch, the light had gone honey warm. The phone buzzed. "Mary, potluck Friday? I'm bringing lemon bars." I didn't answer, not right away. I let the question sit with the evening, with the chair-shaped shadow still faint on my truck bed, with the knowledge that not every invitation needs an apology to go with it. Claire laughed with Tom from the kitchen, some joke about crooked shelves and the miracles a shim can work. I stood there and let hope do what it does best. Arrive unannounced, no doorbell, just step inside like it lives here. The climax wasn't the text. It was the room inside me I hadn't used in a while opening again, quiet, ready for company. Night pressed soft against the windows, and the radio found a country song that didn't try too hard. Survive, get up, make coffee, repeat. I stood in the doorway between the shop and the house, half in sawdust, half in lamplight, one boot on concrete, one on old pine. That little strip of threshold held everything I'd been walking through. What broke, what held, what's next? The chair sat finished behind me. The kitchen breathed ahead of me. I took a long breath and let it out longer. No speeches, no deals with God. Just a yes to the work and the rest in their proper turns. In the distance, a freight train pulled the night forward like it always does. The climax lived in the smallest move. I clicked off the shop light, felt the dark settle without fear, and stepped into the house. Not to escape where I'd been, just to cross over, honest, into what comes after. The house I built is still here. Stairs that don't squeak, porch boards that remember every season, windows that learned our weather. Out by the walk, crocuses push through last year's leaves, stubborn and purple, like little flags that say, keep going. I lost money. I lost a marriage. I lost the version of myself that thought silence was love. But I kept my name clean. I kept my hands honest. I kept the part of me that knows how to make something hold. That's enough to start again. I run my palm along the doorframe, feel the grain answer back, and say it soft, for me more than anyone. I am the carpenter, not the man broken by what left, the man who builds what stays. If you've ever stood in your own doorway and chosen who you'll be from here, drop a comment. 1 for revenge or 2 for dignity. Tell me why. And if you want to see what comes next, subscribe. The shop light's on. The story isn't over.